so you're going to need, well, if you do the oil change, you're also going to need 6.5 litres of oil. You're going to need an oil filter, and then in the Vanos kit there'll be 4 seals and 4 rings. You'll have the main cover gasket. You'll have 2 little gaskets that go around the coils, and then you'll have all the individual gaskets for each bolt. Mine actually came with 2 replacement washers for the banjo bolt. I didn't realise, but I mean I keep a box of copper washers anyway. I've also got some gunk for cleaning the rocker cover, because that's pretty messy. I've got some brake cleaner I also use to clean the surfaces, get all the oil off after I'd scraped all the bits off. So I've got your adjustable spanner to do the take the cap off the oil filter housing. Those are just all the washers I took off, the rubber grommet things. I actually used 2 compasses, which I think I explained in the video. They're handy for when you've cut into the seals on the Vanos as much as you can. You just put a compass either side and pull it apart to split it. Decent knife, put a stick a new blade in that for doing the seals. Got a couple of torque wrenches, one for some of the small torques, and then one, because I think it's like a 40 torque there somewhere along the way, 40 Newton meters. I think there's a 19mm spanner for doing the banjo bolt on that oil line. We've got a number 8, sort of like a Allen key socket. We've got a T25 and a T30 socket. We've got a selection of sockets here, 16. I think there was a, not sure if I used a 17. The main ones, if you're not doing oil changes, for doing just the seals and the gaskets, you'll need some longer sockets ideally, a 13 and a 10. There was an 8 along the way just for, I think it was an earth wire on the coils. A few different attachments and extensions for your wrench. Magnet, I think this is pretty crucial for fishing nuts and things out of what you can't get to with your fingers, so I use that quite a lot. I definitely recommend that. Some lubricant. I tend to just use GT85 because I've got loads of it. Definitely recommend, I don't know what these are called, some sort of pliers with when the end goes off at an angle, especially for getting the plastic cap out of the exhaust side of the Vanos, because it's so low down you can't get any pliers in because the radiator's in the way. So I struggled for ages until I went out and bought some of these. So yeah, definitely get some of these. You've got your wrench, a little flathead screwdriver. Yeah, just a few other bits. Ramps. I put it up on ramps for the whole time. I mean, I was doing an oil change anyway, but it's good because I'm quite tall to have the car up in the air as much as you can. That's about it. A lot of rags. Get as many oil rags as you can. Get a nice clean surface to do your Vanos seals on. I suppose you got your gasket sealant stuff that should come with the kit. You want a little pot of oil to put on the seals you put on them. And that's about it really. I have to drive the front up onto some wooden blocks so I can get a trolley jack underneath. You jack it up from the beam that runs below the engine. It's just as soon as the metal starts after that cover you've taken off, that's where it is. It looks like there's an indentation there. First step is to remove the cover. Just I think it's 6 little rusty screws that you can just undo with any screwdriver. I've disconnected the battery to start with, just the negative terminal. Not sure whether you need to or not, but I think it's probably best practice when you're handling the electrical system. So there's loads of videos on YouTube already for valve cover gasket replacement and Vanos seals. I'm using the 50s kid his video for the Rocker Cover Gasket, and I was going to use reviews by TH, his Vanos seals episode, but rather than doing a whole exactly the same thing, I thought I'd just maybe document a few of the issues I come into as I do it. So what I've done, I thought I would combine it with an oil change. So they've just put the car up on ramps, drained all the oil out, left that overnight draining, replaced the oil filter. So yeah, so far what I've done is remove the pollen filter housing. That's just 4 T30 sockets. That comes out pretty easy. Then you just got to take the 2 covers off the engine. You just flick the 2. There's 2 caps on each one, which hide the nuts. Just think 10mm socket to get the 4 nuts off. So that's about as far as I've got. I've taken the air scoop off the front, just to give me, it was just for easier access to undoing the oil filter lid. So first thing I've noticed, I was expecting, because you get a bit of oil on exhaust smell every now and then, so I was expecting it to be coming from the main outside gasket, but once I went to take the harness off the coils, I don't know whether you can see it on this camera, but you can see there's little pools of oil next to every coil, and then probably can't see very well, but on the very last one then it runs down the side of the engine and down towards the exhaust. So I think that was where the oil was actually leaking from. So I've had this done twice at a garage in the 2 years I've had it. So whether it's a rubbish gasket or they're just not doing the job correctly. So yeah, this time I thought I'd do it myself, because I want to do the Vanos seals anyway. So I've soaked up the oil from around the coils. There seems to be oil in with every coil. So I've disconnected the harness from the coil packs. They're quite easy on this one. You just flick that up and it pushes the plug out. The harness itself is connected to the cover, so you need to remove that. You can see there's two little clips you've got to pry away with a little flathead screwdriver, and then there's 3, I think, underneath it. Yeah, I think there's 3 little clips underneath them. Once you pry all of them away, the harness will come out. There we are. So yeah, you just got to disconnect the earth terminal as well, but that can just move over out of the way now. So I've gone round just loosening each of the cover bolts just a fraction, just to make sure they all undo. Now I'm going to pull out the coil packs. They take a bit of a struggle to get the first one out. I was a bit worried I was going to break something because it's all plasticky. But yeah, I used both hands and just gripped it as far down as I could. And just kept pulling and eventually it slid out. So I just laid out the 6 coils, just put them in, laid them out in the right order just so they can go back in the same order. I'm not sure if it makes a lot of difference, but probably good practice to do that. So there's the Vanos seal repair kit I got. It's from X8R. So you got your sealant, your bolt gaskets, your valve cover gaskets, the Vanos gasket, and then the seals for in the Vanos themselves, and some bolts and washers. You need to remove this oil pipe. I think you're supposed to squeeze sort of at 12 and 6 o'clock, but it doesn't, it kind of half breaks when you're doing it, so it's pretty fragile. If I haven't mentioned earlier, ideally you want some deep 10mm sockets for these. Typically it's like the one size I haven't got in the deep ones, so I did manage to use like a regular size 10mm socket, but unfortunately what you have to do to stop yourself rounding the nut off is to put it on first, and then you can get half of the attachment into the back of the socket, so it won't go in all the way, but at least the socket's all the way over the nut. But they're not amazingly tight, so I mean you can get away with a shorter 10mm socket, but ideally you want one of those deep ones. So I've got the cover off now. Really didn't want to come off. I was starting to doubt whether I needed to undo all these nuts or bolts, whatever they are, but it was just really well sealed still. I managed to start it off on this here really gently with a flat-headed screwdriver, just levering it against here. I got to lift slightly and just kept working my way around until finally it came off. It looks a bit black. Let's see if I can give that a clean. I think the cover's going to need a clean as well. Right, now onto the Vanos itself. I've taken the fan out just to make it get a bit more space. That's just a T25 on this side, and then one of those black plugs like you get on the intake. There's 3 on the intake. There's one that holds that side of the fan on. So I put a bin bag over my nice new radiator. Put a bin bag over all the belts and pulleys. Put some clothing in there as well. Try and catch some of the oil. Not sure how much is going to be in there, seeing as I've drained all the oil out. But let's find out. So now I've removed the six nuts that go around underneath the Vanos unit, and they're 10mm nuts, and then I've removed this, which is like a 13mm bolt. I've pulled the plastic caps out of both sides. The left hand one you'll need I don't know what you call them, the needle nose pliers with like a kink in it, which I showed at the beginning, to get that one out, just because the radiator is in the way. I've removed the 2 T30 screws. So remember those are reverse threads, so you have to turn it clockwise to undo. Not sure if I needed to, but I've got a pen and drawn a line from there, across the 2 chains, just in case I do something stupid and shift the timing At least I'd know that I've done it then. Not sure if it's necessary, but I suppose it can't hurt. So there's the Vanos unit off. It's a bit grubby down here. Might try and clean that up a bit. So after you've taken all the bolts off, you also have to disconnect this cable and this, which is this goes to the left hand side of the Vanos. You've got two of them to unplug as well, just like your normal. Push the metal bit in to release, and this one you've got to pinch either side. Bit of a pain to do that one. Had to lever it while I was squeezing it, didn't want to come off. So there's the Vanos unit off. Good use of old underwear. Going for about 10 pairs trying to soak up oil. Still misting, just keeps coming out. I don't know where it keeps coming from. So right, let's get the seals on. There's my 5 pairs of seals. It's also come, the kit I've got it's come with new bolts and washers. So I'm going to do what Throttle House did as well, and put these in a bag and soak them in some warm water just to make them a bit more pliable. So taking out the rings and the seals from the pistons, it's a bit fiddly because you're worried about taking a chunk out of the metal. What I did was cut across the seals diagonally. You've got the ring which you cut off first, which is quite easy because it's got a seal sitting underneath it, so you can, once you take that ring off and you've got the seal underneath, because it's a bit deeper into the groove, it's a bit trickier. So I've been cutting at an angle, cutting up close with the back end of the knife, and then as soon as I move along and get near the metal, and then switching around. So I've always got the blunt side against the metal. Once I think I've cut enough, what I was doing, don't know whether it's the best way or not, but it seems to work for me. I've got 2 compasses. So I was this sharp compass, then I would poke into one end of the seal, one side of the cut, poke the other compass in the other side of the cut, and just slide them apart, and then the slightest bit of contact between the seals would just snap then with the force of pushing the compass either direction. Yeah, so that's the way I did it. Otherwise, for the first one I was there cutting for ages, and it must have just been held on by a thread. So yeah, once you've got the compasses and actually pulled it in opposite directions, it broke apart. The rings are pretty solid. That's what you'd expect because they're rings. The seals that I took off, still fairly round, not as round as the new ones, and they feel quite hard. See, I wasn't quite sure why I had 8 seals for these pistons. So you put the seal will be deepest into the groove, and then the ring sits on top. So you've got like 2 going there, 2 going there, 2 going there, and 2 going there. So the new rings and seals are on. I'll put a link to the X8R guide I used at the bottom of the screen. But once you've put the seals and the rings on, you need to put the piston inside the holder. You have to oil both sides, and then you sort of put it in at a slight angle and twist it, and then it will drop in like this and sit nicely, and that will seat the seal and ring properly. So I think you're supposed to leave it for about 5 minutes, but I've done it for more than that. So you do that to both of them. So I've got a little pot of oil here to use, and then you do the same then with the big side of the piston. You make sure you put loads of oil inside here, oil around the big side of the piston where the seal is, and then you kind of put it in at an angle and twist it, and then it just slots in there and you just push it in, or twist it as you push it in. So just leave that again 5 minutes either side, but I've left it a bit longer while I've been replacing the seals on these little caps that came out at the beginning. Again, you have to kind of get a Stanley knife, cut at an angle, do it from one side, turn it around, cut from the other side, and when you think you're pretty much there, I got a compass again, just poked a compass into where it was broken and just sort of pulled it apart, and then it just broke the last few threads holding it together. The new seal's gone pretty easy. Only problem I had with the rings, you're supposed to soak the rings for the 4 rings you get in warm water. It's still pretty tight to get on. When you put them on, they don't look like they're quite sitting right. That's why I guess you have to sit them in their respective places for the 5-10 minutes just to make sure they seat properly then. So I've bolted the Vanos unit back together. Supposed to be 8 Newton meters torque for the bolts, or the nuts even. Now to put it back on here, I've put a new gasket on. Let's fit the Vanos unit back on. So I got the Vanos unit back on. I've reconnected the banjo bolt, put 2 new copper washers on there. Pretty much all these nuts were 8 Newton meters of torque. This one, I think it was 10, but I just did it until it felt tight enough. Put the little screws inside back in these. Remember they're reverse thread, so you have to turn anti-clockwise to tighten. Put the new little plastic caps in there with the new seals on. They're actually, I thought they would just push in, but with mine it was a bit of a pain in the ass. I had to push them in as much as I could with my thumb, and then I used this ratchet attachment to push against it, and then I just pushed pretty much as hard as I could against the engine, and eventually they popped in. So they feel pretty secure now. I just got to put the cap on either side. That seems to be 50 Newton meters, so that's done up pretty tight. I've reconnected this cable, this one, and then the 2 that are down here. Remember to put the lift bracket thing on before you put the banjo bolt back on. I just realised that and had to take it back off. I've cleaned up all the surfaces. I've scraped off any remains, mainly with my nail. Probably want something plastic to do it with. So I've gone around the perimeter of it. I've done all the 6 rings where the spark plugs are, and then once I've finished, I've got some brake cleaner, sprayed it on a cloth, went around all the surfaces to try and get rid of any grease. So I've cleaned the cover up as much as I can. It's pretty grey, so yeah, looking a lot better. I've scraped off any remains of the gasket just with my nail and Stanley knife blade. I've got all the new seals ready, so I'm just going to put some sealant on the sort of, I think they call it the moon shape on the head. I'm also going to put some where the Vanos meets the head, just on the contact area there. Leave it for 2-3 minutes, and then I'll put the cover on. Okay, the cover's back on now. Took quite a long time to put it on. You're supposed to work in like a spiral pattern, just keep turning them a little bit at a time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right in the corner, and then back to the other side, 13, 14, 15. So yeah, I just kept going around, probably did about 20 circuits of those spirals, just turn up a little bit at a time just to get the gasket on even. Once that was on, I can clip this pipe back on, push all the coils back in the right order. These plugs are pretty easy to clip back in, and then connect your earth cable. Put all these cables into the clips on the side of the casing just to keep them out of the way. Fans back in, and both plugs are in. Put the sump plug back in, put 6 litres of oil in, probably start it up, and then once it settles I'll check it again. I haven't put the covers back on, they've still got to go. Just got to connect the battery back up again and give it a blast. So having finished now, I'd probably recommend, if you haven't got a decent torque wrench, I would do all the 9 bolts on the Vanos unit, which put the covers back on. I'd probably do them by hand, because I used a torque wrench on one of them. I got some new bolts with it, so I was putting them in. I tried to do it to the 8 Newton meters, and it started stripping the thread in the hole. Luckily, I think I put one of the old bolts back in, which was a few mil longer, so there was still a few lines of thread right at the bottom of the hole. I ended up having to put, I forget what it's called, Loctite. Yeah, I ended up using some Loctite in it, and I tightened it. It felt like it was pretty tight, so hopefully it will last. And then the bolts on the rocker cover I did all them by hand. You have to do like a spiral pattern. I think I mentioned it in the video. So you're there for like half an hour, just doing it a little bit at a time. But unfortunately, I think that's the way it's got to be done. So I think, like I said at the beginning, probably 2 torque wrenches, a big one and one that's can do the. I think after having done it, I bought myself a small torque wrench where it goes up in increments of about 2, so about 2 to 20. So yeah, I'd get a small torque wrench as well, or just do them by hand. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I've got an episode coming soon where I compare the acceleration between the stock with the Vanos seals replaced and then after a remap. Cheers, bye.